I'm ashamed to admit that my first thought, when I heard they'd found her, wasn't relief, but a flicker of grim satisfaction. They said she was barely breathing, fixed on something no one else could see, and a morbid curiosity bloomed in me, wanting to know what price she'd paid to cheat death. But the worst part, the part one truly despise myself for, is that even after hearing everything, I still believe there's a part of her that never actually came back, and I find myself hoping I'll never know why. The rescue team, or what was left of it, had a story. Elara, that was her name, had fallen, hit her head, some kind of disorientation. They found her under a makeshift shelter of broken branches and rocks, barely breathing, her eyes wide and fixed on something no one else could see. Or so I heard. Another version said she was humming, a quiet, tuneless thing, when they pulled her out, covered in dust and a kind of gray-white ash. The doctors in the field hospital, a series of tents lit by the harsh glare of portable generators, all ice blue canvas and the stark, sterile white of emergency blankets, confirmed the concussion. But they also noted a peculiar stillness about her. Not shock, not catatonia, just a quiet, deep-seated observation, like she was watching something unfold that wasn't visible to the rest of them. She was given a clean bill of health, eventually. Physically, anyway. A few bruises, some dehydration. Nothing that explained the 2 weeks, or the discrepancy in the jacket color. Those details got smoothed out, you know how it is. Official reports prefer clean lines, not a tangled skein of what-ifs and contradictions. They settled on ice blue. The crimson, they said, must have been a trick of the failing light, or the dust. But I remember seeing that first image, grainy and pixelated, and it was undeniably crimson, deep and vital. A splash of defiant color against the gray. Elara had a daughter, a little girl named Lena, maybe 6 or 7 at the time. Lena had been with her father, waiting. Expecting the worst, then offered a miracle. Her mother, whole. Mostly. That's where the story gets sticky. Because Elara came back, but the person who came back wasn't quite the same as the one who left. Not in any way you could point to, not at first. Her laugh was a fraction of a second slower. Her eyes, the color of twilight, seemed to hold a flicker of something unreadable, like light catching on a distant, hidden glacier. She'd say, "It's fine," and the words would land with the weight of granite, even for something as simple as being asked if she wanted more tea. What strikes me at this point is how readily people accept a partial truth when the alternative is too uncomfortable. Everyone wanted Elara to be a survivor, a testament to human resilience. And she was, in a way. But she also carried a kind of inverse gravity, pulling everyone around her into a quieter orbit. Lena, especially. The child would watch her mother, sometimes for minutes at a time, her small face a map of confused adoration. Elara would catch her gaze, offer a small, almost imperceptible nod, and go back to whatever quiet task she was performing. There was a man, I heard, a relief worker named Kale, who had been on the initial search party. He was the one who insisted they keep looking past the official timeline, beyond where the others had given up. He had seen too many missing people surface days or weeks later, clinging to life by threads others couldn't even perceive. He'd lost his own daughter in a similar disaster years before, or so the whispers went, not that he ever spoke of it. He just had this relentless, almost furious optimism. He was the one who found Elara, huddled in her makeshift den. He helped stabilize her, gave her his last water bottle, the one with the faded electric ice blue label, and waited with her for the proper team to arrive. He was the official hero of the story, the one the news channels wanted to interview. But Elara never spoke his name. Not to me, not to anyone I ever heard her speak to. She went home. Tried to resume life. The mountain, the ridge that had collapsed, it was part of their daily view. A jagged scar against the sky, now a memorial. People would visit it, leave flowers, small tokens. Elara would sometimes sit in her garden, looking up at it, her hands in her lap, utterly still. Lena would come out, bring her a doll, or a drawing. "Mama, are you sad?" And Elara would turn, a slow, deliberate movement, and say, "No, darling. Just thinking." But Lena, a child of impossible clarity, would shake her head. "You look like you're listening to something that isn't there. Actually, wait. That's not quite right." Lena didn't say that. Not then. She said it much, much later, when she was older and could articulate the quiet dread that had settled over their house like a persistent, unseen fog. What she said then, when she was small, was, "Mama, are you cold?" Because Elara was always cold, even in the height of summer, her skin taking on a faint, almost translucent quality. She'd wear thick sweaters, the color of dried blood, even indoors. Elara started collecting things. Maps of the ridge, geological surveys, weather patterns from the days she was missing. She'd spread them out on the dining room table, a vast ocean of white paper under the cold glow of the kitchen light. Lena would watch her, drawing pictures of jagged peaks and tiny stick figures. Elara never stopped her, never explained. She just moved through the documents with a quiet intensity, marking things with a fine-tipped pen, connecting points that seemed disparate to anyone else. It was a kind of archaeological dig, but into her own lost time. She was looking for an anomaly. That was the word I heard her use once, much later, when I happened to be in the same room as her, years after the fact. A glitch in the fabric of what should have been. She believed she had seen something, or rather, felt something, during those missing days. Something that defied the official explanation of a simple rockslide. Something that had changed her, fundamentally, from the inside out. Her body, she said, had survived. But it had brought back a passenger. An understanding that had no place in the ordinary world. Maybe you felt this too. That specific exhaustion of knowing something, deeply, profoundly, but having no language for it, no one to tell who wouldn't look at you with pity or concern for your sanity. It wasn't a secret she was keeping, it was a truth she was trying to translate. She found a pattern in the seismic data, a series of micro-tremors that didn't fit the established fault lines. A sudden, sharp spike in atmospheric pressure right before the collapse, followed by an equally sharp drop, but not caused by weather. It was all there, on paper, under the cold light. She'd found the data, cross-referenced it, compiled it into neat, indexed binders. Every page a testament to her thoroughness. But what did it mean? What was she supposed to do with it? She approached people. Geologists, meteorologists, officials from the Disaster Relief Agency. She spoke in precise, measured tones, presenting her binders, her meticulously annotated maps. They would listen, patiently, nodding. "Very interesting, Elara. We'll look into it." But their eyes held that distant, polite dismissal. Her flaw, you see, was that she mistook thoroughness for action. She believed that if she could just prove it, clearly and unequivocally, then someone would do something. There was another person who listened. A Dr. Eris Thorne. He was a scientist, not a hero. He ran a small, independent research foundation, specializing in environmental anomalies. He was driven by a kind of strategic justice, a belief that certain truths, however inconvenient, had to be brought to light for the future's sake. He had the kind of calm, steady gaze that made you feel simultaneously scrutinized and understood. He reached out to Elara after hearing a fragmented, dismissive report about her obsessive theories. He saw the meticulousness, the patterns, the data. He saw the fire behind the quiet eyes. He had his own wounds, too, a deep-seated distrust of official narratives, born from a lifetime of watching small, inconvenient truths be buried under the weight of larger, more palatable lies. He had a small, faded scar that ran across his jawline, a memory of a protest that had turned violent, years ago. He never spoke of it, but sometimes, when he was thinking deeply, his hand would drift to it, almost unconsciously. Elara started working with him. Not officially, not on a payroll. She just brought her binders, her quiet intensity, to his small, cluttered office. The air in there smelled of old paper and something metallic, like ozone after a storm. They pored over the data together, two quiet figures under a single, bare bulb, the only light in the electric ice blue gloom of the late nights. He didn't offer comfort. He offered intellectual rigor. He challenged her assumptions, pushed her to find stronger correlations, to connect the seemingly impossible dots. You speak of an anomaly, he'd say, his voice low, but what does an anomaly do? And she would describe it. Not in terms of physics, or geology, but in terms of feeling. A resonance. A vibration that altered perception. That's what had happened to her, she believed. It wasn't just a physical collapse. It was a momentary breach, a slippage, into something else. And she had, in those lost days, glimpsed it. That's why she was changed. Not just bruised, not just concussed, but fundamentally retuned. The peak of her research, the second peak of this whole story, wasn't a grand discovery, but a quiet, almost domestic moment. Lena was 16 by then, sharp-eyed and watchful. She had found one of her mother's old childhood photographs, tucked into a dusty album. Elara, maybe 5 years old, standing by a river, wearing a bright crimson dress. Lena brought it to her mother, who was, as usual, at the dining room table, surrounded by documents. "Mama," Lena said, holding out the photograph, "you used to wear crimson. Now you only wear ice blue, or that dark red. Why?" Elara looked at the photograph, then at Lena, then at the pile of geological reports. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, "That's not quite right. I remember that dress. It was blue." Lena frowned. "No, Mama. It's crimson. See?" She pointed to the faded but distinct color in the old photo. Elara took the picture. Her thumb traced the outline of her younger self. She closed her eyes. And for the first time, in all the years since the ridge collapsed, she spoke of it. Not to Thorn, not to an official. To her daughter. She described the shift, the way colors had changed for her after the collapse. How the world had been recalibrated. How certain frequencies were now muted, and others amplified. She didn't use scientific terms. She used the language of a mother trying to explain a fundamental, terrifying truth to her child. A truth about how she was different. A truth that had no name. "I still don't know if I made the right choice," she said to Lena, her voice barely a whisper, "by coming back the way I did. Or if I should have just stayed." Lena, bless her, didn't flinch. She just looked at her mother, truly looked, and then she saw it. Not the physical scars, but the deep, internal fracture that had never healed. The way her mother's eyes now seemed to peer just beyond the visible spectrum. The way her skin, once vibrant, now had that subtle, chilling pallor, like a landscape seen through a thin sheet of ice. I mean, can you imagine? That moment, when your child finally sees not just the lie you've been living, but the profound, unfixable truth beneath it. What do you say then? The private confrontation happened with Kale, the relief worker, the hero. Thorn had found a critical piece of evidence, a transmission log from the satellite phone Elara had been carrying. It wasn't dead for days. It had made a single, brief outgoing call, moments before the collapse, to a number that didn't exist. A dead-end number, but the log existed. And the time stamp. It contradicted Kale's official report of finding Elara unconscious and disoriented, because the log showed activity from after he claimed to have first reached her. Elara and Thorn arranged a meeting. In a sterile, government office, all polished metal and electric ice blue walls. No warmth, no comfort. Kale arrived, the same stoic, weathered man, still carrying the faint aura of a man who had faced the worst and emerged. Elara placed the single sheet of paper, the log, on the table between them. Thorn simply stood, a silent witness. Kale picked up the paper. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, scanned the data. He didn't speak for a long time. The silence in that room was absolute, designed to discourage any presence. Elara just watched him, her gaze unwavering. She wasn't angry. She was just present. Finally, Cale looked up. It was for her, he said, his voice rough. My daughter. I thought she was speaking to me. He admitted it. Not to the officials, not to the world. To Elara. He'd found her, yes. But she hadn't been unconscious. She'd been speaking into the dead phone, muttering something he couldn't understand, something about colors and frequencies. He'd seen a chance, a way to weave his own grief into her survival story, to believe his lost child had somehow guided him. He had taken the phone, thinking it was a sign, and then reported her as unresponsive, to cover his own inexplicable moment of belief, of delusion. He was a good man, trying to cope. And he'd inadvertently muddied the waters of her truth. He looked at Elara, his face etched with something akin to shame, but also a strange relief. You saw it, didn't you? What happened? Elara didn't answer. She simply retrieved the log sheet. It confirmed everything she had suspected, everything her body knew, but nothing changed. No official report was altered. No new investigation launched. Cale's hero status remained. The mountain still held its secrets. The truth cost more than the lie that replaced it. What did keeping it change? Nothing, structurally. Everything, for her. For Lena. I'm not going to pretend this resolved cleanly. Elara kept working with Thorn, compiling more data, seeking connections, but it was a quiet, relentless pursuit, not a crusade. She never sought public validation again. Lena grew up, went to college, studied geology, of all things. She was fascinated by the hidden forces beneath the Earth's surface. She often wore a scarf, electric ice blue, woven with threads of deep crimson. A quiet tribute. I saw Elara just a few months ago, in a cafe near Thorn's old office. She was older now, her hair streaked with silver that caught the light like spun glass. She was alone, sipping tea, her eyes still holding that distant, unreadable flicker. She had a small, worn photograph tucked into the frame of her ancient satellite phone, which still sat on the table beside her. A picture of Lena, smiling, against a backdrop of distant, ice-blue mountains. The phone itself, of course, was still dead. It always would be. But sometimes, when she looked at it, I thought I saw a faint, almost imperceptible pulse of light, deep within its obsidian screen. Or maybe that was just the reflection of the crimson sunset through the cafe window. Cale admitted his delusion, then Elara chose to protect his hero status instead of exposing the full truth. If you were Elara, knowing what you knew, what would you have done with that log sheet? If you find yourself drawn to the quiet strength of those who carry heavy truths, and stories where the real battles are fought internally, you found your community. Consider sharing this with anyone who understands the burden of hidden truths, or how a single act of misplaced hope can echo through a lifetime. This story is for them. The truth cost Elara more than the lie. If you faced her impossible choice, would you have fought for the official record, or pursued truth quietly? Tell me in the comments. If this story left you with that same quiet, heavy feeling of an unyielding truth, that subtle pulse of light in the darkness, a like says you felt it too. If you're someone who finds power in quiet resilience, who looks for the deeper currents beneath the surface of a story, this channel is for you.